Boxing truth here. This is one of a few stories I'm going to be banging out for the next couple of days. So I figured I started with a Chris Algieri story. It's interesting news came out about him and had to do about his purse that he received for his last fight against Errol Spence. And Algieri, according to a report, is not happy with the money he received, considering that he, for some strange ass reason, which is his own fault, maybe he needs to fire his lawyer. It was a 50-50 split with his promoter, Joe DeGuardia of Star Boxing. Now that doesn't make any fucking sense. How does a fighter negotiate a 50-50 split with his promoter? It doesn't work that way. Fighters in boxing are supposed to get 65 to 85% of the revenue of a purse that's being split between the promoter. So in other words, the fighter's supposed to get the majority of the proceeds. But that didn't happen in this scenario. For some strange reason, a 50-50 split was negotiated on behalf of Algieri through his lawyer. And not only did Algieri get trashed by Errol Spence, destroyed in 5 rounds, a damaging loss, has to go through the drawing board, looked a little war-torn, considering the very tough schedule of fights he's had, Pervanikov, Manny Pacquiao, Amir Khan, and an up-and-coming killer like Errol Spence. So now, Algieri feels he got shortchanged by his own promoter. And he wants to negotiate for future bouts a different type of split, which is really 70-30 in favor of the fighter, which sounds about right. I mean, this is according to other fighters, other reports, but usually promoters charge anywhere between 5 to up to 30% of your purse that's offered to you by either a network, a license fee. So the promoters take out their cut, and then the majority of it goes to the fighter. Then the fighter has to pay off their manager. I mean, if they have a manager, an advisor, their trainer, of course, the cutman, sparring partners. And in Algieri, he had a lot of expenses, man. He had to pay off an assistant trainer, his trainer, a cutman, a physical therapist. He also had to pay weekly salaries to sparring partners, plus housing and food. He also had a strength coach he had to pay. And if you want quality sparring partners, they cost some money. If you want some quality sparring partners that can give you good work, it's going to cost you some bills. So all those expenses, and according to Algieri, he spent nearly 6 figures just to prepare for Errol Spence in this fight, and he got absolutely destroyed. And feels according to the expenses he paid off, he made significantly less than his promoter Joe DeGuardia. Now, the purse Algieri got was $325,000 as a main event against Errol Spence. Now, what was a little surprising about the PBC on NBC, their debut last week, was that the purses that was reported by the boxing media, it was very significantly low compared to the past shows, especially compared to last year's PBC shows. Now, if anyone watched the PBC show on NBC last week, it was a lot different. There was no ramp. There was no Marv Albert. There was no all these different type of commentators, side line reporters like in the corners. No Danny Jacobs there. No Layla Ali. No Sugar Ray Leonard. It was just B.J. Flores and forgot his name. The play-by-play guy. I think Kenny Rice. His name is. I mean, they didn't do a bad job. Those guys know boxing, so the telecast was fine, but they didn't have the glamour compared to last year. So it seems like the money's running dry. The purses were very different compared to last year's shows, especially Algieri's. Now, Algieri, ever since he got to the HBO platform, at first, when he first got his big win against Pervanikov, that's when he started making six figures in his career. That was his first six-figure purse on his first showing on HBO. He made 100K for that fight, and then he went from 100K to 1.5 million against Manny Pacquiao, and then he made 500,000 on a PBC show against Amir Khan on Spike. So he made considerably lower money for a fight against Errol Spence on a bigger network like NBC compared to Spike, which NBC has a lot more homes, a lot more viewers. So I know Spence is not a champion or a former champion or even as big as name as Amir Khan, but considering that Amir Khan made 1.5 million for that fight and Algieri made 500K, a lot of money was spent for the two main event fighters that night, and it was considerably less for the main event between Spence and Algieri. Now that 50-50 split, that's just plain wrong. I mean, no way should a fighter split 50% of his purse with his promoter. That makes no freaking sense. You don't even split 50% with your manager. The fighters in boxing are supposed to get the majority of the proceeds, unless they get taken advantage of. Now, look, this is boxing. This is prize fighting. If fighters gonna let the suits take advantage of them, they will. So you have to read your contracts. You have to be smart. You have to hire a lawyer that understands the business of boxing. Now, according to LaGuardia in this report, he stated that Algieri's lawyer negotiated for a certain purse, not a certain split, and that's why that was the purse that he received, $325,000. Now, Algieri's saying that he's violating the Muhammad Ali Act, that he didn't disclose the full amount of money that was offered to him by the PBC, and Algieri's pissed off. I mean, he spent a lot of money preparing for the fight, a lot of expenses, and LaGuardia didn't really lift a finger at all. He wasn't the lead promoter for the fight. It was Lou DiBella who did all the promoting of the fight, the press conferences. All LaGuardia did was just do a deal with Algieri, the split, and watch the fight, and collected his percentage, 50 split of 650K that was offered to him by the PBC. So Algieri should have made somewhere close to the range of 500,000 for this fight. Had his lawyer negotiated a more proper split in favor of Algieri. So it's going to be interesting what happens to Algieri now. Algieri is going to probably want out of his contract with LaGuardia or whatever, negotiate a different type of split for future fights. He's looking to see if that can happen. If that doesn't happen, potentially Algieri could be on the shelf, and he might consider litigation to get out of his contract. Now, what's interesting about Algieri, ever since he has been featured on the PBC, we really don't know what's his situation with the PBC, what's his situation with Al Heyman. About a year ago, a reporter asked him, what's the deal with the PBC? Are you an Al Heyman client? Are you an Al Heyman fighter? And still promoted by LaGuardia. And Algieri refused to answer the question, and he pretty much didn't deny, and he didn't confirm that he was an Al Heyman client. But who knows? Nobody really knows. But it just makes no sense that Algieri got a 50% split with his promoter. I never heard of that before. It's always the other way around. Like, a fighter gets the majority, the promoter gets a cut. So I know Top Rank, well, this is according to Mayweather, they charge about 27% of the purse split of what you're offered. They take 27%, and then you get the rest. But that's according to Mayweather. He's probably right about that, 27%. But this is the thing. Fighters have to be careful. You got to read your contracts. You got to have the right people around you. I mean, all these suits, they're just money-grabbing promoters. Promoters are in the best interest of themselves. I mean, they're about their company and continue to do big business and continuing to make money. And if a fighter is going to let one of the suits take advantage of them, they will. It's happened plenty of times in the past. Fighters that have just didn't have the smarts, the experience or the knowledge. I mean, look at what happened to Primo Carnera. He was a circus, man. I mean, his handlers pretty much just robbed him of everything. Gave him crumbs compared to the money he was generating. I mean, Sonny Liston, he was illiterate. He couldn't read. And the mob, whoever who was handling him, took advantage of him. They didn't give him his fair share of his fights. So it's happened plenty of times in the past. Recently, Mikey Garcia he did an interview with ES News, a very groundbreaking interview, pretty much explained the entire story of the situation with Top Rank. But I have no sympathy for Mikey Garcia. He's a fucking idiot. You willingly signed the contract. You signed the contract, and you try to sue your way out of it, despite the number of years that you still had on the contract, and also putting your signature on the dotted line. I mean, that's the way promoters are. You have to read those contracts. They'll put up these crazy extensions or purse splits if you don't read them. I mean, they'll take advantage of you. An extension for a number of fights, or winning a world title, or the amount of money you made in a fight, or perhaps getting a contract deal with a network. They'll have all those stipulations in the contract. And if you don't read them, if you don't object to them, and you hit, it's over. You're going to be stuck with them for a number of years, unless they ain't doing good for you. I mean, if they're getting you the big fights, they're getting you big money, then why? There's no reason to get out of a contract if you're comfortable with them, if they're taking care of you. But that's how promoters are. They're not interested in just doing one fight with you, do one big money fight, and then you go off to another venture or another promoter. That's not how they roll. They want long-term deals, a long-term relationship, and keep making money together. And then when you're done, you're on to your next life after boxing. But this is another example of just bad negotiating from a fighter. His lawyer, Chris Algieri's lawyer, fucked up. I mean, that makes no sense. 50-50 split with a promoter who was not the lead promoter of the event, who didn't have any expenses, actually made more money compared to what Algieri made for the Spence fight, and all the expenses Algieri had prior to this fight with Errol Spence. So let's see where Algieri goes from here. Will he remain with Joe DeGuardia Star Boxing? Will he sue his way out of that contract? Will he be on the shelf? Will he get any get-back fights, any confidence-building fights to perhaps get him back into title contention? I wish Chris Algieri the best. He's come a long way in boxing. He's overachieved in his career, overexceeded the expectations of anyone who saw him come up. But he's got to get the situation sorted out and see what's up and how he got a 50% split with his actual promoter. This is Boxing Truth. I'm out.